Yesterday, we were discussing about apamada, diligence, heedfulness, and the importance of being diligent. So, apamada simply, we can understand it as being aware of the objects, being aware of the objects occurring on that very moment. Whenever we see the objects occurring, whenever we meet the objects, if we are able to know it, able to see it as it is, it means we are having apamada dhamma. We are diligent. We are heedful. As we also understand that apamada, diligence, is very important dhamma in the Buddha's teaching, as it is considered as the foundation for the wholesome deeds to occur. So, because this apamada dhamma is very important, how can we be diligent? How can we be diligent? In the text, it is said that if a person is doing his job respectfully, then that person is diligent person. So especially the meditators, when the meditators are doing their job respectfully, then the meditators are diligent, can be called diligent meditators. So doing job respectfully means in the course of practice, the meditators have to behave like a blind person. The meditators have to behave like a deaf, dumb, and weak person. Means they have to move slowly, and the noting mind must be following those activities, those slow motions, slow activities very closely. And the meditators should not look here and there, although they have a very good eyesight. And the meditators should not listen the sounds. And by chance, if they heard anything, any sound, they have to note, they have to observe immediately, not listening. And the meditators have to behave like a dumb, means they do not know anything. means they should not recall their knowledges that they have gained before, the theory, the Dhamma talks that they have heard, the books they have read. They should not recall those knowledges while they are observing the every presently arising phenomena, physical and mental phenomena. They just need to keep their mind, need to focus their mind on those presently arising physical and mental phenomena without judging, without thinking about that object or thinking about their practice or their experiences. So Sakatsakari is if a meditator can practice respectfully, then meditator is a diligent person. And also, when a person practice continuously in every postures, sitting, standing, walking, lying down, in every posture, if he can practice, he can maintain his mindfulness, and again, a meditator is called a diligent meditator. So practice continuously means not stopping, not breaking off the mindfulness. That is athitakari. Athitakari means not practicing as a stop and go manner, not breaking off the mindfulness. That means practicing continuously. And again, putting effort. Anolina utita, the putting effort continuously, applying the effort in the practice continuously. If a meditator can exert effort continuously without any break, then that meditator is called diligent meditator. Appamatta, diligent meditator. And a meditator, if a meditator has a desire for the practice, if he has a desire to practice continuously, not giving up on the way, not giving up on the way. If he has a desire to continue his practice until he reaches the destination, the final destination, then that meditator is called diligent meditator. A meditator who has the desire to continue his practice, desire to apply effort in the practice to the final destination. And again, the meditator is not leaving the practice, means he continues to apply effort. So if the yogi can practice respectfully, continuously, without break, applying effort, having desire continuously to the final destination, so that type of meditator is called diligent meditator. So therefore, when we are practicing this Satipatthana meditation, then our job is just to observe the presently arising objects. We do not have a time to think about that object. We do not have a time to recall our past experiences. If we are recalling our past experiences, if we are judging, then we lose mindfulness. We lose mindfulness. If we are judging or recalling past experiences for 1 second, we lose mindfulness for 1 second. So if we are thinking about that object that we are having right now, the object occurring in the moment for 5 minutes, then we lose mindfulness for 5 minutes. So that way there will be a big gap between the notings, a very big gap between the notings, and many defilements, especially restlessness, may enter. Restlessness may arise because there is a big gap in the notings. We break our concentration and we won't be able to see the true natures of the objects. So we will not get the benefits. We will not experience the benefits of the practice. And because of that, the restlessness arises. Therefore, the Buddha said that appamada dhamma is very important. Being diligent is very important, especially when doing the Satipatthana Vipassana practice. So when we meet the objects, different objects, visible objects, sounds, smells, taste, tangible objects, and other mental objects. As soon as we meet those objects, if we are able to note, able to observe those objects, then the Buddha said that we are not distracted. We are not distracted externally. In one discourse, the Buddha said that, Buddha said to the monks that, "O monks, you should not be distracted. You should not be scattered or diffused externally. And again, you should not be stuck internally. You should not be scattered or distracted externally. Your mind should not be distracted or scattered or diffused externally. And again, your mind should not be stuck internally. Only if your mind is not distracted externally and not stuck internally, then you will not have a suffering. You will not have a suffering of rebirth, old age, and death in future. So here we need to understand what does it means distracted or scattered externally and stuck internally. Distracted externally means whenever we meet the objects, if we are able to, if we are not able to note those objects, then what will happen? For example, we meet the visible form. We see the visible form with our eyes. And if we are not mindful of these visible objects, visible form, what will happen? If that visible form is something very desirable, very attractive, then greed may arise. If that visible object is undesirable, not attractive, anger may arise, anger will arise. And we do not know about that visible object, that means moha is there, delusion. So when we see the visible objects, if we are not aware of that visible object, means if we do not apply effort to know or to see that visible objects, if we are not mindful, the greed, anger, or delusion may arise. That means our mind is distracted externally. Of course, we all meet those objects, the sense objects, all the time. We cannot avoid. We will meet, for sure, the sense objects. While noting rising and falling movement of the abdomen, our mind focused on that rising and falling movement of the abdomen. We are knowing about this rising and falling movement of the abdomen very clearly. And the mind, suddenly the mind sees something desirable, visible objects. Instead of noting that visible objects as seeing, if we start to think about that visible objects, how it is, what it is, and if we take it as a very good, desirable one, immediately greed arises. Then that means our mind is scattered externally. When we are doing sitting meditation, our noting of the objects going very smoothly, mindfulness and concentration is very good. And at that time, a fellow yogi makes a sound, and we found that, oh, concentration break off because of that sound. And we, as soon as we hear the sound, actually as a meditator, our duty is to note that sound as hearing. Once our mind is on that sound, we should note it hearing immediately. But instead of noting that sound as hearing, we may think that, oh, this yogi is making sound, my concentration breaks, or disturbing other yogis. So if we are thinking that way, it means there is no mindfulness, and our noting mind is scattered outside, scattered externally. The Buddha said that the mind, we should not let the mind scattered externally. If we let the mind scattered externally, what will happen? We will have sufferings. So therefore, whatever the sense objects, the visible forms, sounds, smells, taste, the tangible objects, and also the mental objects, they occurs, we should note it immediately. Immediately. In sitting meditation, the most difficult part is to know about our mind, the most difficult thing. Because the mind is very hard to see, and the mind wanders here and there all the time. The mind is like a monkey in the jungle, not calm. It's very difficult to see, difficult to control our mind. And it is very subtle. So, although we think that in the practice, sometimes we are focusing, I'm focusing the main object. And I can see, I can know the main object very clearly. The rising and falling movement, from the very beginning to the end, I can follow it very closely and I can see it very clearly. I can know the very true nature of that rising movements, like a tension. I can see the tensions, sometimes stiffness, sometimes expansion, sometimes pushing force or pulling force, or sometimes the rising occurs as a waves. And when we see those true natures, at the same time, sometimes the mind is thinking about that. The mind is thinking about that object, that notings. Although we think that there is just a mindfulness, just pure mindfulness is there. And I know everything, what's happening. I can know everything. But sometimes we didn't see what's happening behind. We are observing the objects, we are knowing the nature of the objects, but sometimes at the same time, the mind is talking, the mind is analyzing about notings. So that thinking and analyzing about the objects is also a kind of disturbance in the practice. It is also the kind of disturbance at that time. Because the mind is very fast, we didn't see that, we didn't realize that. We think that my mind is observing the objects, my mindfulness is very good. But there is some wandering minds, not wandering outside, not wandering in the external objects, but inside us. So that type of wandering mind, the thinking mind, the analyzing mind, we should be able to notice. We should be able to note them, observe them. Then we will have a very good mindfulness. Therefore, there are many mental objects, many ideas coming into our mind, and whenever those ideas occur in our mind, we have to observe it immediately. If we are able to observe those mental objects, those ideas, those thoughts, then our mind is not scattered externally. And what does the Buddha mean by the mind is not stuck internally? So in the course of practice, here we are doing Satipatthana Vipassana meditation. And when we observe the object, first we aim the object. We send the noting mind to the object. We incline the noting mind to the object. We are focusing that object. So this focusing, this aiming the object is one of the jhana factor called vitakka in Pali. This is one of the jhana factor. So whatever objects we are observing, whether the main object, primary object, or other secondary objects, we should send our noting mind to the object. We should incline our mind to the objects. We aim the object. And we are also applying effort. We aim the object and we are applying effort so the noting mind reaches to that object. So because of that aiming or focusing, the noting mind reaches to the object means the noting mind touches the object. And we should try our best to keep that noting mind on that object, not letting go of the object. We should try our best to keep that noting mind on that object. So when noting mind reaches that object, that mind seems rubbing that object, means the mind stay on that object. That is another jhanic factor, vichara. So every time when we note the objects, these two factors, vitakka and vichara. Vitakka is translated as initial application, and vichara is translated as sustained application. These two factors are very important. Whether you practice tranquility meditation or whether you practice insight meditation. At the beginning of the practice, these two factors, initial application and sustained application, are very important. They play a very important role in the practice, in meditation. So, for example, we are noting rising movement in the abdomen. We send our mind to that rising movement so that the mind is there and it seems like rubbing that rising movement. So Vitakka and Vichara is there. When the noting mind can catch the object, then only the mind can rub that object. So again, this Vitakka aiming is like catching up the object, catching the object. The simile is given like if you want to clean a pot made of copper, if you want to clean the pot made of copper, you have to hold that pot with one hand very firmly. First, you have to hold that pot with one hand very firmly, and then you can, then you have to rub with the another hand. If the pot you do not hold firmly, then you cannot rub because it moves here and there. So first you have to hold the pot very firmly, and with the another hand, you rub it again and again. So by holding firmly, rubbing it again and again, what will happen? The pot becomes very clean, very shiny, very clean and shiny. So same way, here the holding the pot firmly is like a Vitakka, catching the object. And rubbing it again and again is like a Vichara. So at the beginning of practice, when we have these two factors, Vitakka and Vichara, we rub the objects again and again. At that time, the noting mind is on that object all the time. The noting mind is on that object all the time means there is no chance for hindrances to enter in the mind. No chance for hindrances. Means the noting mind is free of hindrances. Free of hindrances, the mental hindrances. That is called viveka, seclusion. Free of hindrances for that moment. As long as you can hold the object and rub it again and again, the hindrances will not get a chance to enter into the mind. So you have a viveka, seclusion. The mind is secluded from those unskillful mental hindrances. And when mind is free of hindrances, that means the mind is now clean, pure, and bright. The mind is very clean, pure, and bright. And because the mind is clean, pure, and bright, piti, rapture, arises. Piti, rapture arises, and because of piti and rapture, sukha also arises. Rapture and bliss arises, and the mind is concentrated. The mind now is calm, still, and steady on that object. So this is also the jhana factors, actually, piti, sukha, and calmness, that is ekagata, concentration. These are the jhana factors. And when those jhana factors are present, the mind is now free of mental hindrances for some time. The mind is, there is very peaceful bliss. The mind is free of hindrances. Now we can see the nature of that object observed very clearly. We feel very peaceful. We feel very calm. So we have a kind of sukha. And that kind of sukha is not the sukha we gain for having the sensual pleasures. This kind of sukha is not gained because of the sensual pleasures. This kind of sukha, pleasure, is called nikkhamma sukha. Nikkhamma sukha means the pleasure or bliss of renunciation. The pleasure or the sukha, bliss of renunciation. Because your mind is free from hindrances. No hindrances at all. So when in the practice, when we have that type of sukha, sometimes we enjoy it. When we experience this type of sukha, then we enjoy it. Means, according to the Satipatthana Sutta, whatever feelings you are having in the practice, while in the practice, you have to observe them. Whether you are having painful feelings or whether you are having pleasurable feelings. We are instructed to observe it as it is. But sometimes in the course of practice, when we experience this type of pleasure, the pleasure we gain from the practice, not from the sensual pleasures. The pleasure we gain through the practice, we enjoy it. We are very delighted to have this type of pleasure, this type of sukha. So we forget to note, we forget to observe it. We become negligent. So not observing or not noting that type of experience, that type of feelings in the practice means our mind stuck internally. Our mind stuck internally. Our mind is stuck internally. Because when, if we cannot observe this type of pleasurable feelings gained through the practice, and we are delighted, very delighted, we forget to note it, means we cannot go further. We cannot go further. That is, the mind is, said to be, the mind is what? Stuck internally. Therefore, the Buddha said that if the mind is not stuck internally, then one can be free of sufferings of rebirth, old age, and death. If one is stuck internally, then one cannot be free of the sufferings of rebirth, old age, and death. At the beginning of in the practice, after practicing for some time, in the meditation, after practicing for some time, sometimes we may feel some calmness. We feel our body is so calm. The body is very calm and the mind also very calm. And some yogi may say, oh, there is nothing to note. There is no object, so calm, very peaceful. At that time, they enjoy that peacefulness. They are happy to have. They are very happy to have that type of peacefulness, that type of calmness. And they forget to note it. So we have to be very careful. That's why we just need to remember the instruction. Yeah, the instruction in short, the short instruction, we just have to observe whatever objects occurring in that moment. Observe the objects occurring in that movement, in that moment. So means if we have that calm feeling, very peaceful feeling, that is also the kind of object that we should observe. So take it as an object, this calm feeling, that peaceful feeling, comfortable feeling. Instead of enjoying it, instead of thinking about that feeling, just observe it. Means if we can observe it immediately, then we are diligent. We are diligent and we are not stuck internally. So these two facts that the Buddha told the monks: do not let your mind scattered externally, and do not let your mind stuck internally. If you are able to do that, you will be free of sufferings, the suffering of rebirth, old age, and death. So in conclusion, what we can see here, that just be mindful all the time. The mindfulness is the most important factor here. Just try to be mindful, just aware of the objects occurring in the present moment. But being mindful all the time is not the very easy one, not the very easy thing. we should have saddha. We should have a faith. We should have a faith in the practice, especially in the practice that we are doing here right now. So the faith, saddha, is very, very important. This saddha, the Buddha said that this saddha is like a seed to cultivate the wholesome deeds. Saddha is like a seed to cultivate the wholesome deeds, wholesome actions. Just like saddha, the tree is born and that tree bears the fruit. Same way, if saddha, faith, and confidence is there, we do the wholesome deeds. The wholesome deed here, now we are doing this mindfulness practice. If we have saddha, we apply energy. We put effort in the practice. If our saddha, faith, is very weak, our effort also will be very weak. We won't put much effort in the practice because our saddha is very weak. So this saddha, faith, is very, very important. We should have the good saddha. We should have a powerful saddha. But of course, at the beginning of the practice, we may not have a strong, powerful faith in the practice because we have not experienced the benefits of the practice yet. We have not seen the benefits yet. Our saddha is still very weak at the beginning. But it doesn't matter. With that weak saddha also, we can apply a great effort in the practice. Because we have heard about this, heard about the practice. This practice is how beneficial, how good, how beneficial for the beings. So because we heard about the practice, based on that, we can make awake saddha. We can awake saddha, faith. So only if we have a faith in that way, if we can awake saddha in that way, then we will put effort in the practice. We will try to observe every objects occurring in that moment continuously, respectfully, continuously, until we reach our final destination. So may you all be able to apply ardent effort in the practice so that you will not, your mind will not be scattered externally and your mind will not be stuck internally. That's all for today.